I didn't see it. Oh, I see it now. All right, there we go. Got to figure it out. Uh, only took like 17 tries and three different people from six different countries to get us going, but we are here now. Thank you everyone for joining me. If you are here with me, let me know. I said that as if this is a ghost hunting show, but anyways, I'm excited to be here with you guys. Like I said, I do plan on doing these every single Friday and being live, even with my wife's extra loud clicky mouse. I'm just playing. Go do your thing. She is working on the business, so that is very important that she does her thing. But today, I want to talk to you guys about a few different things. We're going to have fun today. Most likely, we're just going to talk about a multitude of different topics. But I want to start with one that's really near and dear to my heart, because I do believe it's the one thing that has been the biggest takeaway from 2023 and then going into the beginning part of 2024. And I think it is something that I've heard from so many high-level entrepreneurs, and it's the one aspect that I've heard that transforms people's business and their life overall. And that concept is resiliency, or persistence, however you want to say it. But I like resiliency. It sounds a little more fancy. So resiliency and resourcefulness, both of those things, they go hand in hand, because you have to have the resiliency to be able to deal with whatever is happening to you in the moment, and especially in your feelings, because that's where you feel it first. You're not going to be attacked just in the physical, like with a muscle ache or with something happening. That will happen. There'll be things that happen in that way. But more times than not, you are going to actually run into the emotions that you feel, your feelings. So what I've found to be really important is you can move no matter how you feel. You can continue working on the business, continue going to the job, continue showing up in your marriage, continue serving in that church or serving your local community, even when you don't want to, even when you feel like you can't. So, yes, I understand that you may feel down and depressed and as if nothing is changing and that you can't keep moving forward. But I'm here to tell you that that is not the truth. I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. You actually can move through those things. Now, it's not easy. And there are things like crippling depression. But I have found it for me in my own life that typically comes from a decision that I haven't made or from a confrontation that I haven't had. And putting it in that way, most people do not like the word confrontation. Most people are not very confrontational. But there are times when you just have to stand your ground. And you can do it in a polite way. You can do it in a nice, in a genuinely caring way. I'm not saying go out here and be a butthead. What I am saying is sometimes you have to have that difficult conversation, the one that is keeping you from being able to get good sleep at night. So, I mean, there's plenty of different examples I could give, but I do find it just to be important to keep that in mind for your own self and what you're walking through right now. If you're going through a hard time, just like that one country song is like, if you're going through it, just keep going. So what that looks like is just don't stop. Like, don't sit down in the middle of it and wallow in your pity. Don't sit and get beat up by the naysayers, because most people, especially if you're stepping into your dream, your calling, you're walking this thing out, most people are not going to understand. Look, let me just be honest with you. 99% of people will never understand what it means to step fully into the vision that God has given them. And that's sad, because we're the body of Christ, so we should. But we should also view it as a great honor that we are stepping into it and we are being co-heirs with Christ, that we are picking up the mantle and we're walking into this thing. So resiliency, persistence, resourcefulness. A lot of times we look at a lack of resources as, well, we're just waiting on something to happen, but it is actually just the lack of resourcefulness. And so and yes, I think that you may have a big mission that you're building, that you're doing, but if there's a palpable need, how can you get resourceful? What can you do? And can you actually kill your pride able to access some of these resources, because some of the resources that you need, I mean, I've seen it from people that they don't want to get food stamps, or they're not going to want to do whatever it is, not going to want to get financial aid, and they just want to do it themselves and bootstrap and not take tests or whatever it is, whatever level, right? There's so many people that I've seen, they're too prideful to do it. But you're over there upset about not having the resources. You're over there upset because life has hit you in the face, but you're too prideful to take the help that's there. So you got to release that, and you got to step fully into whatever that area is. So that is the big one. That's what I wanted to talk about. We'll probably swing back around to that in a little bit. This one, not sure entirely how long we'll go today, just kind of hanging out. If you guys want to jump in, ask me any questions, you can view it on, if you're viewing this on YouTube, you can put a message in the chat. I can see it. So if you have a question that you want to get answered, please put it in the chat and I will correspond with you. But that's a little bit of tough love that I'm giving you, because I know that everyone has different situations and they are going through different things. But even with that being true, you can still continue to move forward even when you feel like you can't. And you're going to build a resiliency inside yourself to realize that you can do things. I mean, that's something that our son is like, hey, he'll be sitting there wallowing in the floor because he has to put his shoes on. And it's like, Liam can do hard things. So that's my encouragement to you, is even if you feel like you can't, I promise you, you can do hard things too. You can do things that are hard and they don't feel. To do the best on doing those hard things. There's going to be days that are easier than others. There's going to be days where you just feel absolutely crippled. But I don't believe it should be every day. I believe that you should be able to, at some point in time, especially if you're a Christian, asking the Holy Spirit to come in and give you the power, give you the peace that surpasses all understanding, to do something. Like, okay, Lord, I don't feel up to doing everything that I know is on my list. It's usually when we get down on ourselves, it's usually because we have this big monster we've created. Well, I've got 87 things on my to-do list. I can't do all those, so I'm just not going to do anything. But what if you can just do one? Like, your list shrinks. It may take you 87 days to get through that list, but it's like, okay, I can do one. And then I can do another one the next day. Instead of worrying about trying to knock out the whole thing, trying to eat the whole cake at one time, let's worry about one bite at a time. But I mean, I've talked about this before, but that is how you are able to build yourself. I believe building your business, it can go in one of two ways. You can build it incrementally, but I would rather build it in chunks. So I think that building it in chunks is also more achievable if you have the right plan in place, and if you can identify the blind spots in your business, in yourself even, because this is something that spoke to me yesterday. I watched a video of somebody who, they are very high level. They work with companies doing tens of millions of dollars, and they just talked about how most of the time people will say that they can't do something. Well, I can't do that. I can't do this. I can't. But she would flip it from I can't to, okay, that's the goal. And I think that that's such a fantastic way to look at it, because there's so many times when I look at business where I'll talk to people that are founders or investors, and it's like, oh, well, you know, they can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, but what if they flip that and they can do it because of this? So, and that's even to think about in your own personal life. You say, well, I can't pick up 200 pounds. It's like, okay, so what would you have to do? What would the actions have to be able to pick up that 200 pounds? Maybe you can't right now, but the goal is not to do that now. Like, if right now we're on 75 strong. So if you go and you see our social media, it's all over the place, mine and Brittany's. But in 75 strong, I'm not going to be my ideal version of me next week. Not going to happen. But I have to say, well, I can't do that next week, but how can I be this ideal version of me? What is it going to take? Well, it's going to take me getting a gram of protein per pound of body weight. It's going to take me getting so much amount of water. It's going to take me working out 4 or 5 days a week. This is what it takes for me to get said goal. And when you break it down in that way, then it's manageable. It's like, okay, did I do these things? If I did these things today, yes, okay, great, goal will happen in such and such amount of days. But so often we just allow the heaviness of the goal to crush us. And instead of thinking of in terms of, okay, how can I, and this, even saying this to most people just seems super unrealistic depending on where you are. But it's like, how can I go to $100,000 a month? Like, what is the fastest way to 100K a month? And 100K profit, not 100K revenue. Like, what is the fastest way to 100K profit? And actually finding every way that it's not possible. Well, it's not possible because in looking at your current circumstances, your current situation, it's not possible because of, I need these systems. I'd have to figure out the outreach. I'd have to detail a full sales process. I'd have to hire a sales team. I'd have to hire a setter team. I'd have to find people for the client fulfillment. It's like, okay, now those just became your goals. Like, if you want to get to 100K as fast as possible, those are now your goals. So, and if you can break that down into whatever it is in your life that you feel is giving you the stress, if that's your marriage, if that's your kids, is okay, what can I do? So I had an amazing podcast I did earlier this week, and it will come out in a few weeks. But he talked about the concept of happiness as a whole and identifying the different areas in your life that you're not happy, looking at yourself and saying, what can I do to change this area? And when you can do it in that way, it makes it more obtainable. Because so often it's like, oh, that person won't change. This situation won't change. This is what's happening. But if you can reframe that and say, what can I do to just impact it? It gives you the tools to at least start seeing some kind of change. And then just don't get stuck in the situation. Like, you're in a moment. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter if you are walking through one of the worst diagnoses you've ever gotten. Maybe you just got a cancer diagnosis and you're listening to this. I have a buddy who was on the podcast, Nick. Nick is a 4-time cancer survivor. So unless you decide that it's over, it's not over yet. If you're looking at your bank account and you've got negative money in there, like you owe money because you ain't got no money, it's okay. It is one moment. You're in one moment in time. This is not your entire life. You have had money before. You will have it again. This is one moment in time. It's not over unless you decide, hey, I'm done. And that's what the enemy wants us to believe, that when you get stuck in these moments, that's the end of your life, that you're never going to get out of it, that it feels like forever, that things will never change. But that's not the truth. It will change. You'll be fine. You just got to give it time and keep moving forward. Keep working on the thing that you felt like you're supposed to be working on, and it will continue to work on you. Because as you're out there working on the business, you're working on the marriage, the parenting, the friendships, you're going to be learning new skills, new things about you. So don't discredit small beginnings, or even if you're in large beginnings. If you're some of the people who have been on my podcast and you're listening, don't discredit where you're at. Just because you feel led to a bigger goal doesn't mean that the goals that you've accomplished are nothing. Just because you want to add more value doesn't mean that the value that you have is nothing. Be content in much and content with little. Sitting in the spot that you're in and being able to actually walk into these different rooms, into these different areas of your life and say, okay, this is what I got. This is what I'm excited to do. And I'm just excited to be here and to serve. So, yeah, I think that is really the big majority of what I wanted to talk about. Next, we're going to just find some fun stuff on Threads and talk about it. I think this is a good one. So someone on Threads said, the more I listen to this, the better my life gets. If they don't have what you want, don't listen to what they say. So I think that that's actually a really fascinating one, because I think for me personally, I think that it's easy to say that. I think it's easy to say, if they don't have what you want, don't listen to them. And I think 90% of the time that's correct. I think that's great advice, because if they don't have the life that you want, why would you let them give you advice on the life that you want? Now, here is where I think the 10% comes into play, is if you are walking in the same general direction as someone. So if I'm on a trail here in Oklahoma and I'm walking next to somebody actively having a conversation about the goal of where we are going, even if we're building different things, even at the end of the day, if we end up splitting off and going different directions, I know that they are at least walking a similar path. If that is that 10%, that you guys are being able to stumble over the fallen trees and watch out for cars together, you're overcoming these obstacles together, even if it's in different business models, different walks of life. What happens is now you are not just getting mentor feedback, because when you look at the 90%, that is the people that have the life you want, and they're giving you advice, or you're just modeling their life, is that's a mentor to mentee relationship where you're only getting what they give. But when you're in a peer-to-peer relationship, what you get then is you get the experiences. So they're going to get your experience. How did you overcome that tree? I'm stuck at the tree. Can you help me over the tree? Hey, there's a car coming. Hey, how did you know that car was coming? That car almost ran me over. It almost took me out. But you're able to walk with a peer who is walking through the same things as you, so you can overcome obstacles at the same kind of break points, as they call them. So I think that it's really good to have those two. And then there's also this like 5% that I have heard from someone else that talks about it, that talks about like the 3 different levels of mentorship, basically. And the last one was you become a mentor, so you teach. And so basically it is, as you're walking out this path, is then you can turn around and help somebody else that's at the beginning of their journey and say, hey, this is how I started. This is what I did. Hey, watch out for that tree. Hey, this is what you're doing. This is what you're going to need 100 yards down the trail to watch out for the car. When you do that, so you have the mentor that's mentoring you, you have the peer-to-peer, you are teaching somebody. Now you have the full arsenal to be able to actually obtain the success that you want. And again, if you're at the beginning of the path, or you're restarting at the beginning of the path, be very careful who you tell your ideas to, because there's people in our lives that there's people here in Oklahoma that they care about us deeply. At least I believe so. And when we tell them that, hey, we're actually sticking with the business, we're not going to go get a job. It's like, the Lord has opened some doors here. There's some really great traction. There's momentum. It just looks like they've seen a ghost. And it blows me away, because nothing great was built in one day. Nothing great was built without its own set of roadblocks and failures and revitalization and replanning. So why do we believe that business would be any different? Why do we believe that it should be different if it's been tough for you? I think that's such a crazy way to look at things. And also, most people, like I said, they will not understand. Like 99% of people will not understand why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing it. And honestly, it's our bad. If you're a business owner listening, it's our bad. We can't expect them to. Like, we can't expect them to understand. We can't expect them to be on the bandwagon with us saying, yeah, you got the best business idea in the world. If they don't understand it, they're not going to back it. So be okay with it. Be okay with losing some people along the way. That doesn't mean that they don't love you, and that doesn't mean that you can't love them. But what it does mean is that they're not going to get it, and you shouldn't be weighed down by the comments and remarks that they're saying or that they're not saying. Sometimes we don't move just because we feel like somebody's not proud of us, just because we feel like that they're not with us or not walking this life out with us. So we just kind of toss it to the side. But if you move, no matter whose comments, no matter who sees you, no matter who affirms you, and you do you, it's really crazy when people come back around. It's like, oh yeah, I knew that you'd do that. It's like, no, you didn't. You did not know that I was going to do that, or that I would become this, or whatever it may be. There's some people who are cautiously optimistic that they're hopeful that you will do it. But some people are not that way. And that's okay. Like, those are the people that if you're of faith, you pray for them. And if you're not of faith, you just ignore their comments and concerns. And you move forward with your life. And you go back to those 3 different mentor levels. You find you a mentor that's ahead. Mentorship does not mean that you have to pay for coaching. It does not mean that you have to go Find somebody that you love online, follow their stuff. Secondly, is you walk peer to peer with someone, you find somebody else walking in the same vein of life that you're walking in, and then you walk it out together. Third is then you teach. And when you teach somebody, now all of a sudden you're basically putting all those things into play. Next, see what else we can get into. Growth requires intentionality. Nobody improves by accident. That's true. So growth requires intentionality. This is what we talked about earlier in the live, is you don't grow by accident. Like, you don't find resiliency by accident. You don't find happiness by accident. Like, you don't wake up one day and just be like, oh, magically happy. It may feel that way, but there's things in your life that have changed. Maybe there's more finances that came in. Maybe you actually found peace, the peace of God that you're looking for. Maybe you gave up something. Maybe you went to bed early. Maybe you got a good night's sleep. But there's actual tangible things that have happened. So I believe it's best for people to take the time to realize, okay, where do I intentionally need to grow to be able to go where I want to go? Most people stop growing after high school. There's a statistic that says that, I think it's like over half, it's more than half of people. How many? Oh, let me ask this. What percentage of people stop reading? So according to wordsrated.com, 51.57% of adults in the U.S. have not read a full book in over a year. 22% have not read a book in over 3 years, and 10.83% have not read a book in over 10 years. There's another statistic that just talks about how the majority, I think it's like 70% of people don't read a book after high school or something crazy. But even with this, if over half of people do not read a full book in a year, that means that you are taking a whole year off. Most likely you're taking a whole year off from growing, because I have found so much growth to happen through a book. So take time, read something. Maybe you're reading articles. I would put in there reading articles that make you better, reading ebooks, whatever it is. But do something. Be intentional about your growth this year. Don't just try to go yes, absolutely go get better at your skills, but also get better at your interpersonal skills. How you interact with people, how you interact with you is really important on how you interact with people. So that's a big one, being intentional with your own growth in 2024. I think this is an interesting one. Dear business owners and creators, stop consuming more than you're creating. Really fascinating. I think that I understand the thought process. So the thought process is for you to create and add more value out into the marketplace and what you're consuming. But I think that it's also an interesting thought if we go back to what I said when it comes to learning, is sometimes if you're sitting there watching YouTube videos or you're on Instagram watching reels and you're learning from them. Now, if you're just consuming, that's different. There's definitely times when it comes to reels, especially, that I'll just sit there and just scroll through funny reels, and it makes me laugh and I enjoy that. But I also consume videos that add value to me as an owner, as a business owner, add value to me as a Christian. So I think it just depends on what you're consuming, because if you're consuming the right things, then I don't see how that's bad. But I think it's because, especially if you are adding value, if you're doing long form content, like this is a form of long form content, you can cut this up into shorts, you can do whatever with it, and you can maximize the amount of value that you give. Great. So I think consuming is fine if you know what your limits are. Because I think everything in moderation is good. I mean, if you sit there and you're just eating, you could eat a ton of steaks, and I think the steaks are great for you, tons of protein. But you can only eat so much. And again, I mean, I'm not really producing steaks. But if you are correlating that into content, if I'm consuming steak, you should at least try to produce something. Like make some form of content, whether that's posts on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Threads, on whatever. Making posts and just adding value, I think, is really, really good. The hard part of friendship isn't outgrowing them; it's drawing new boundaries once you do. I think friendship is such a interesting word, because if we go and we look at friends, we look at our peer-to-peer group, right? Our peer groups that are around us. You have to choose, and this is where this person was talking about boundaries, is you have to choose who you're around, who you spend your time with. I think it's great to have friends that aren't married, if you are married, who are, who may not be in business if you're in business, they walk in different areas of life than you do. I think that's great. You just have to have a certain level of boundaries where it's like, hey, we can hang out, but this part of my life, this is like an area that I'm not too sure if you're going to be completely in. And you also have to have your different circles. You have your circles of friends, like your close-knit friends, the little bit further out, like they're around more often, but they're your ideal 3 to 5 people. They're more like the 10 to 12. And then you have like your big circle of acquaintances. So finding those core people is really, really important. Honestly, still working on that. I believe I'm still working on finding our core people. And that's okay, because I've found some amazing, amazing people through doing networking, through doing the podcast. There's some people that if they lived in Tulsa, they would be my people. But unfortunately, we have space between us, and that keeps us from being really close. But I do absolutely cherish everyone that the Lord has let me interact with, and for the people that he's brought into my life that can speak into my life, because I don't let just anyone speak into me, because you have to be careful with that, because people will speak into your life what they want to see happen for theirs. Sometimes they may speak the right thing, and you just have to discern that. You have to see, are they speaking, is that something that's for me or is it not? If it is, then I can pick it up. I can receive that. If it's not, then I just leave it right there, and that's fine. So being discerning of your friends is going to be key. And also just treating people like people, because at the end of the day, your friends don't have to be you, and you don't have to be them. Maybe you have a friend who is uber successful and you have not achieved that level of success yet. It doesn't mean that they should cut you off, or you should just like, hold on, I can't be your friend until I get there. If they're open to having that friendship, then you have that friendship, and you add value where you can. You serve where you can. You love where you can. If the shoe's on the other foot, if the person's heart is in the right place and the person's heart is good, then you have to discern and see, is this person for me or not? Because you don't know who they'll become, because you could be helping them one day, giving them, mentoring them, helping them. And then all of a sudden you look up and they're somebody huge. I've heard it a few different times of people who they have big businesses. They would start mentoring somebody, and then that person would blow up and have a bigger business than them. That's where you have to also let go of your pride, because if you help somebody become bigger than you, then that means that you know what you're talking about, and you actually can help people and add true value. But if you keep having that pride of, I've got to have the biggest thing, I have to consume everything, I can't do anything for free, you got to pay me to do it, when you aren't willing to be generous with what the Lord has given you, then unfortunately you will lose it. So just putting that out there. That's how I approach friend groups. Is I want friends who they choose me, and I want friends that I also choose them back. Because some people will choose you as their friend, and you go, you do not align with me. We can be acquaintances. You can be in this circle, and I can spend some time with you, but I'm not going to spend all the time with you. And then it's also vice versa, where it's like, I want to spend all the time with you, and they might not feel the same way. So you just have to give them that space, and you have to visually feel feedback. And then even what I said earlier, if that's a relationship you really want, and if that is stressing you, you need to have real conversations and just say, hey, this is who I thought we were going to be, but for some reason I keep trying to engage with you at this level, trying to bring you into my inner circle, and you treat me as an acquaintance. So where am I missing it? Because when we've talked in the past, it sounded like that this made sense for both parties. Where am I missing it? Where's the break? And just let them say, oh, no, that is who I am to you, and that's who you are to me. This is just how I interact with people because of this, and this. And then you get to lay out, like, well, to me, if you're in my inner circle, this is kind of what I'm looking for. And then you just give them the choice if that is who they are to you or not. And it's no hard feelings if they say, well, I can't be that. Like, I can't talk to you every week. We can't talk on the phone randomly. Like, it has to be scheduled weeks in advance. And this is just who I am and yada, yada, yada. Then that's okay. Move them out one. And then you can still spend time with them. You can still enjoy their presence, but they don't have to eat up the mental bandwidth. So I'll leave you guys with that. Thank you again for joining me here today. If you enjoyed it, please like it, share it, comment, and I will see you guys. So we'll have an episode dropping on Tuesday. Make sure to catch that one. It's going to be great. And then I will catch you live next Friday. Until then, go watch the other podcast episodes.